Testing. Okay, what is going on, ladies and gents? Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Student Podcast, the number one student podcast in the world. Today we're here with episode number 17, if I've got that correct. And today we're going to be mainly kind of talking about first year and Freshers Week, and kind of just talk through my experience as a first year student and kind of give you guys some advice along the way, because I believe there'll be a lot of students going into architecture school within the next week or the next few weeks to start their kind of journey in architecture. So I thought I'd do a podcast to kind of sit down and talk about my first year experience, give some advice to you guys, and hopefully you guys can take something home from this podcast. But before we dive into the podcast, I'd like to just say, I know I keep saying this, but I apologise for the lack of podcasts and uploads recently. I started my position as a Part 1 architecture assistant 2 weeks ago now. So I've been working full time, and I've been kind of trying to adjust to my new routine and the kind of lifestyle of working in a full-time job. And obviously I'm working remotely because we can't be in the office at the moment. So I'm basically just trying to find like this new routine where I can do my full-time job but also stick to the podcast, the YouTube videos, obviously sticking to doing social media and everything. So just bear with me. I'm basically just trying to find a new routine. And obviously with the first few weeks it's been quite stressful, so I'm trying to get as much rest in as possible. So I will be trying to do as many vlogs and as many podcasts as possible whilst working full time, but just bear with me because I need to kind of adjust to my new environment. So, first year advice, we're going to dive straight into it. I want to kind of make this podcast fairly kind of quick and just dive through some stuff. Whether you're a architecture student or just a student in general, I hope you guys can kind of take something away from the points I'm going to say. So I've basically broken down my tips for first years into kind of 5 points. They're quite broad. I'm going to just be quite broad with this. I don't want to go into too much detail because I could be sat here forever talking about first year. But I thought I'd just break it down into 5 points, which I think you guys might find useful. So the first point of being, which is obviously a little bit different now in the coronavirus, but make friends in the studio. So obviously normally kind of your experience would be a little bit different to my experience because I didn't start university within the middle of a pandemic. But usually I think the studio environment and the kind of community environment is definitely often overlooked at university. I think it's super important in creating a studio environment, and my university was really good in pushing those connections with peers and with kind of having that constant interaction with tutors and everything. I think that's really important. So whether you're going to be in university or not, obviously it's going to be a little bit different if you're not in university, but definitely put yourself out there to meet as many people as possible, to talk to as many people as possible. Obviously it's quite daunting going into university and meeting friends, or making friends and meeting new people, because you're obviously throwing yourself into a situation where you don't really know anyone there, and you have to kind of build those boundaries and those kind of connections with people instantly. Can you hear my dog drinking his water? Bless him. So if you are going into university, definitely try and make the most of meeting as many people as possible, building those connections, because it's really important. And you'll notice throughout your course, you'll find it much easier. You'll have a lot more engagement with your peers and with your tutors if you are kind of getting involved in that studio environment and kind of sitting down and speaking to people, bouncing ideas off one another. And it's really important because then if you have an idea and you kind of want to know, or you want to get some feedback from someone, you can obviously sit down and just speak to people around you. And I think the studio culture and the studio environment allows you to bounce those ideas off one another and to kind of have those conversations in a relaxed environment. And I think you just need to really embrace the studio culture. Obviously, if you are going to be at home studying and you're going to be working over Teams or over Zoom, I'd still kind of encourage you guys to just drop someone a message and say, can we have a quick talk? Can I introduce myself, etc. Obviously, that is still quite daunting, and obviously it's quite scary, but I promise you, if you really do put yourself out there to meet as many people as possible and talk to as many people as possible, you'll find it much easier in the long run to kind of bounce ideas off each other. And kind of give each other ideas and motivation and sharing experiences, because you'll notice when you go to university, people are coming from lots of different cultures, they come from different locations, they've got lots of different backgrounds, they've got different experiences, and essentially you want to learn from as many people as possible and kind of have that in your grasp to be able to speak to all these kind of people. And it will also build you up as a person and a personality yourself, if you are kind of surrounding yourselves with different kind of people that have different experiences and everything. And it's all about learning from people, as well as also kind of talking to people and kind of interacting with people. So my first point is definitely just kind of really embrace the studio culture, try and create a community. Obviously over social media, there is opportunities to be within those kind of communities. Obviously I'm a YouTuber and I kind of try and create this community in my kind of comment section or on Instagram, where I share things on my stories, etc. And there's also people like Sana from 2Scale and Two Worlds Design, who have now got the Mad Collective on Instagram. So if you check them out, they're kind of fantastic people where there's symposiums, you can kind of speak to people online, and they're really kind of important people and leading people in creating this kind of community. Now we're obviously in a situation where social media is a lot more kind of present, and obviously we're not really in the university itself to be able to interact with people. So you kind of need to make the most of these social media spaces and these kind of online communities. And I will get Sana on from To Scale within the next few podcasts to kind of talk more about the architecture community and this kind of studio culture. Tip number 2, take some time out from your projects. Don't force things. So what I mean by this, you'll notice that when you spend quite a lot of time within a project, or you spend a lot of time trying to figure out a concept, an idea, or you're trying to kind of push something that isn't quite working, you'll find it a lot easier if you just kind of relax, kind of remove yourself from that project and go off and do something else. I speak about this a lot in kind of my routine videos and talking about my university routine, in kind of stepping back from that work to give yourself and your brain an opportunity to kind of reset and reboot, which you will find is really, really important. Obviously being a first year student, you feel the need to be constantly doing work. You feel the need to constantly be developing your work and pushing your work. But sometimes it's important just to stop, kind of look around and see what you've got, look at the things you've done, and kind of really think about what direction you want to go in with your project, or what direction you think your work is going to go into. And I think in those moments to step back and really just kind of think, and to shut your brain off, to step back from your project is really, really important. And they're kind of really important moments in taking certain directions with ideas and concepts and developing things. So definitely don't force things if you feel like you are. And if you feel like you're trying to force a concept that isn't quite working, or you've got an idea that you really, really like and you're kind of pushing it because you want it to work, sometimes just step back from it, look what the work you've got, go off and do something, go to the gym, go play FIFA, go play Fortnite, go on a night out, go see some friends, go see some family, and just kind of revisit the work and kind of consider what kind of direction you want to go into, because it's very easy to force projects. And even people in third year, even myself, I found myself forcing projects, and you'll find yourself kind of being quite stubborn with an idea early on in university because you think it's the best idea and you want to make that work. But a lot of the time when you're trying to force a project, it just doesn't work. And I think it's just really important to stop, consider what you're doing, take a step back, refresh your brain, shut your brain off from what you're doing, and then return to the work, and you'll find you'll get on with the project a lot better, and you're kind of refreshing your brain, and you kind of reboot that motivation. So yeah. Tip numero 3, listen to your tutors and take feedback on board. Don't be stubborn. So this is kind of elaborating on the last point. Definitely listen to your tutors. I think this is probably one of the most important things in university, to listen to your tutors, and to take feedback is not like negative. Take feedback as constructive criticism, because essentially you'll realize that your tutors are right probably almost 100% of the time. And if you try and argue with them, essentially they are the people with the qualification. They are the people that have gone through your position. They're the people that are architects and they've worked in the profession for a long period of time, and they have all this experience. Don't try and question their ideas and concepts and kind of the direction they want to lead you in, because they are very experienced and they know what they're talking about. And it's very important to not be stubborn and to allow that feedback to kind of push your work down a different direction, and really consider tutors' feedback. It's very easy to have a review or have a tutorial. They give you a load of feedback, then you think, oh no, I'm going to continue doing this and it will be fine. A lot of the time it won't work like that, and they'll bring you back to that point where you've given feedback, and then you'll go down a different route, because essentially you need to listen to your tutors, and their feedback is super important. And also taking feedback from your peers, and that's kind of continuing on from the idea of creating the studio culture, taking feedback from your peers, and just try and take in feedback positively, because it's very easy to kind of take it quite negatively and kind of take it quite personally. But feedback, acting on feedback is a super important one. Point number 4, be open to learn, develop, and explore. This is also kind of leading on from the idea of being stubborn, and kind of stubborn in your own ways and the ways you want things to look, and the kind of people you look up to, and the kind of work that you like, and the kind of architects that you like. Be open to learn and to just learn as many things as possible. I don't think there's any reason and there's no need to kind of shut yourself off from the world and trying to stop yourself from learning. I was very stubborn in first year because I felt like I was doing the right thing. And a lot of the time you'll feel like you are doing the right thing, and you feel like, no, this is good. And you will notice yourself every project getting better and better and better, and things will be changing constantly and evolving. And you'll come out of first year thinking, blooming, if you look at your first project, it's nothing like the end project. And when you go into second year, it's exactly the same thing. And then third year, you even look at your first project in third year, and then the last one, you're like, what on earth has happened? You will constantly keep developing and learning and finding different ways to represent your work, finding different ways of drawing, finding different bits of research and reading something that you might be inspired by. And you'll notice yourself kind of developing, but you can only let that happen if you are open for that happen. Sorry, I butchered that. If you are open for that to happen, if you are open and you let that kind of change to happen. And it's very easy to be kind of stuck in your own ways and just say, no, I don't want to read that, or I don't want to learn this, or I don't want to go down that route, or I don't want my building to look like that because blah, blah, blah. Try it out, test it out. Trust me, you will be very, very kind of happy for it by the end of first year, by the end of second year, by the end of third year, because you'll allow yourself to keep building and growing, and being open to those opportunities of change. And one thing that I was quite stubborn about in first year is that I just did not want to read. Even in second year, I just did not want to read books, that is. I read a lot of stuff online, but a lot of the time, the important thing is to get information from different types of sources, whether that's watching something on YouTube, whether that's watching a film, whether that's watching or listening to lectures and reading stuff that the lectures are giving you, whether that's looking at articles, whether that's just walking down the street and looking at stuff, or even just reading a book. You need to be able to take in this information from all different directions and to be able to kind of be like a sponge and kind of soak it in, because a lot of the time you could be quite locked off from that. No, I don't want to read that book. No, I don't want to watch that because I don't think it'll be useful, or I don't want to read that article because it's just useless. I don't need it. But I promise you, if you try and kind of embrace all of these kind of things and all the different mediums and areas to be able to learn from, you'll find yourself being a lot more rounded or well-rounded as an architecture student. And then when you come to graduate and you go into a practice, you'll notice that your kind of research and your knowledge about the subject will be a lot greater, and you'll be able to feel yourself kind of settling a little bit easier, or you'll be able to kind of have conversations with architects that you didn't think you could have before. So I definitely started reading in third year, and it completely changed my life. Let myself open to be able to learn and to develop. And I sat down and read some books. I sat down and looked through Pinterest a lot more and looked through some ideas and different ways of representing work. And I began to feel myself kind of expanding my knowledge and my understanding of architecture and the possibilities of architecture and design. And I'm a lot more curious now about the subject than I used to be, because I was quite locked off. So my piece of advice is just being really open to learn, open to let yourself develop and kind of explore the possibilities of architecture, and don't stop yourself from reading, from watching films, watching YouTube videos, watching or listening to podcasts and reading articles. Just embrace all of it to be able to get as much information and knowledge from as many different areas as possible. And tip number 5 for first year advice is a big one, and I say it a lot and it's a difficult word to talk about, and that is going to be to find balance. So in first year, it's very, very easy to, once again, like I said, to kind of get all caught up in first year and like, no, I need to keep my head down and really, really work hard, and really, I can't do that. No, I can't enjoy Freshers Week because I need to do this and that and that. Essentially, that is fine. you can really work hard, and that is really important for a first year student to learn as much as possible. You need to keep your head down, work really hard. But it's also really, really important to enjoy the university experience, meet these different kinds of people, spend time in the studio and meet people, go out with your family and friends, and really just embrace the whole university experience and the whole kind of experience of being a student, because it'll only happen once. Your BA Honours only happens once, and you're not going to have that opportunity again in Freshers Week or in first year. So I think a lot of the time I do really push the idea of working really hard, and hard work beats talent, which I really kind of truly believe in. And I'm a big advocate, and I kind of believe everything that I do is about working as hard as you possibly can. But there's also a very, very important thing in balance and finding that balance. And also one big thing about first year is that it is quite daunting. It's quite stressful, and you feel like you need for everything to be perfect. But at the end of the day, I think it's quite similar for a lot of universities. My first year did not account to anything towards my second and third year or towards my degree. It was essentially, if I passed first year, I would get into second year. So a lot of the time, if you're kind of overly stressing about first year, if you actually think about it, it doesn't actually really matter too much. So the important thing is just to not really stress about it. Enjoy the process and enjoy it as much as possible, and just enjoy the course, enjoying learning, enjoying developing. But also enjoy those moments where you can go out for lunch with your mates. You can go play football at lunchtime, or you can wander off and go for drinks after uni, and all of those things. It's all part of the university experience, and it's all part of building your character at university. So I think that is really, really important. So they were kind of 5 very broad points. I could sit down and talk about balance for hours, and I might even do a podcast talking about balance, because I think it's something that I really want to dive into, and it'd be good if I could even get a guest on the podcast to talk about balance, because I think it's just a monumental word. So there are 5 points that I kind of wanted to go into in kind of talking about first year advice, and then I'm going to answer a couple questions that you guys have asked me. Question numero 1 being how to improve studio marks. So I'm going to kind of stick this to first year advice, but I guess it goes throughout the whole course really. The first thing being very important, like I've already mentioned, listen to your tutor's feedback and taking those things on board. Don't be stubborn with it. Definitely embrace what they are saying and really consider what they are saying, but also figure out what you want to do as well. At the end of the day, it's your project, it's what you want to do. So I think there's like a happy medium in doing what your tutors have advised you to do, but also kind of thinking for yourself and realizing for yourself what kind of direction you want to go down and what kind of work you think would be the right way to go down. So I think it's kind of finding that balance in listening to your tutors, but also figuring out and making decisions for yourself, because essentially they are your project, it is your work. And then I'd also say to improve your studio marks, you need to read a lot and research a lot. I think that is super, super important. And I definitely researched a lot throughout first and second year, but it kind of came into fruition in third year when I realized how important it was to read and research, and to really, really back up your ideas and give reasoning and meaning to everything that you do. If you have drawn a straight in a floor plan, if you've gone up and you've drawn a straight line and then you've gone like a diagonal line, you need a reason for doing that. And I think research definitely helps you to do that. Research in understanding different types of architecture, research in understanding theory, concepts, kind of psychology, sociology. You could go into all different kinds of things of research to really help you understand why you are designing spaces a certain way. Why is a wall there? What's that? What kind of environment is that going to make you feel? Is that going to make you feel quite claustrophobic in that space? Is that going to make you feel quite free and able to move around and kind of interact with people? There's all these things that you kind of make these design decisions based off research and your understanding of architecture. But you need to know that too. You need to do the research before you even kind of start thinking that way and understanding spaces and the kind of different environments and the atmospheres that each space provides. And also research in the site. Super important. I think this is often overlooked as well. Getting a very, very, very strong site analysis, I guess, is what you want to call it. And really responding to that site analysis and really taking in that contextual information and really responding to that contextual research. And you'll notice when you go into practice, this is super, super important. This is the driver to most architecture. And there are a lot of architects out there that don't use contextual research, and it just doesn't work very well, in my opinion. So research architects and understand different types of architecture. Research different types of things, even look into psychology and sociology and those kind of things. Look into film. Why not? Just look into everything. Look into arts, look into illustration. Just research. Make the most of the first few years and understanding as many things as possible and just soaking up as much information as possible. But also make sure your site analysis is super, super solid and that everything that you do is responding to your research and you have everything backed up by research and ideas, lots and lots of precedent studies, and understand, especially with precedent studies, make sure you analyze the work, analyze the precedent studies properly, understand why the architect's done that, why the designer's done that, and really understand why they've made these decisions, because then that will help you make your own design decisions when you come to design your own projects. Question number 2. Did you ever feel singled out or specifically disliked by any lecturer? Personally, for me, no. I know this person said that they do, but I feel like this might be another situation where you might not be taking feedback very well, or you feel like you don't really have that connection with your tutors, and these are moments where you need to kind of be active in speaking to your tutors, making sure you're emailing them a lot, stay into contact with them, and you'll realize that your relationship with them will be much better if you are staying in contact with them a lot, meeting them, going on calls, emailing them, asking them questions constantly, because then you are showing that you're engaging with the course, and it's showing that you want to kind of get involved. And the same with lecturers, really. If you've got any questions about lectures, just email them. I personally didn't feel singled out, but I can see why people would, because they probably feel a little bit isolated, or maybe some lecturers might act differently towards you to another student. I think the important thing is to not kind of get bogged down by that and kind of take it into your own hands in messaging, emailing people, speaking to people, and really just kind of getting involved to show your interest in the subject. And I think they will kind of like that if you are showing your interest, and that you are showing that you are really bothered and really excited to learn and really excited to kind of develop as an architect or an architect student. So I personally didn't know, but maybe those kind of things might help you and feel a little bit more comfortable around your lecturers. Question number 3, what to look for when choosing a university? I think there's many things to look for, even as just an architecture course, there's lots of things to look for, and I think it's all about down to kind of what your preferences are. For me, if I kind of just say the kind of things I was looking for a university that had a really good studio and a studio environment, a studio space where we could sit down and kind of speak to people. And that was a big thing for me, that I liked the kind of spaces within the university where you could kind of, the interior architects were right next to the architect students, the landscape architectures. And then on the same floor, there was graphic designers, illustrators, fine art students. And I quite liked how there was that kind of environment, that creative environment on that floor, and you have the opportunity to interact with those students. Even though you might not, there is the opportunity and the option to be able to go into those spaces and interact with those kind of students, which I quite liked. So maybe look for the kind of studio spaces and what kind of people will be around you. Whether the kind of offices for the tutors will be right next to your studio space, so you know that if you've got a question, you could go and speak to the tutors if you want. I think that's another thing to kind of consider. So as the university and the spaces itself, I think that's something that you need to kind of think about. And if you go into a university where there isn't that great kind of studio space and there isn't much kind of natural lighting coming into the spaces and there isn't much interaction with other studios, then maybe that's something you could think about, that might not be something that you want to have. You might want a bright space, you might want a big tables where you can interact with people and you can sit with your friends and whatnot. So there's those kind of things that you need to think about when choosing a university. There's also looking at the course and the kind of structure of the course and what kind of things the course kind of provides, whether the course is more kind of technical, whether the course is kind of more conceptual, and the different things that you're going to be exploring in those courses, what kind of modules you'll be doing and what kind of things you'll be working on. I think those things are really important to kind of research and definitely look around different universities and see what they are providing, and what kind of value you think you can take from each university, because they are all slightly different, but they also kind of run off the same principles in learning about kind of context and the history of architecture, learning about technical and learning about detailing, learning about designing. And there's a lot of the universities to kind of set up in that way to give you kind of a broad scope of architecture. So I think you need to kind of look into that and what their university is providing. Even looking at things like my university had a super studio. So every Wednesday you could go into a kind of studio space where you could sit down and have pretty much extra lessons in collaborative kind of situations where you have like basically lectures and seminars where you have more opportunity to learn things. And that's obviously another kind of inviting feature of the university. So if your university does those kind of things after university, after hours, where they kind of provide lecturers and these opportunities for kind of guest speakers and those kind of things. There's many things to kind of consider when choosing a university, even like the location of the university itself. Is it a city university? Is it a bit more kind of out of the way? Is the accommodation next to the university? I mean, you're going to have to walk half an hour, you're going to have to get a bus, or you're going to have to get a train. There's those kind of things where you kind of think about convenience and the opportunities to go out and how far away from the city centre, how far away is the closest pub. There's all kinds of kind of questions you need to ask yourself, and I think it's important to look around a lot of universities. Don't kind of look at one and be set on that university. Definitely give yourself an option to look around and kind of figure out where you probably feel most comfortable or where you feel most challenged. There's obviously that aspect. So definitely look for a lot of things when you're choosing a university. Just think where you feel like you'd be most you feel like you can kind of settle in well, and also where you feel like you can kind of learn as much as possible, because essentially that is the most important thing about going to university. You want to be in a space where you feel like you're going to be able to learn and to make friends and socialise and being within a studio culture and those kind of things. Best architecture laptop. I'm going into first year. So this person's asked what the best laptop is because they're going into first year. Big question. I get asked this all the time. like all the time. I get this question multiple times a week. So I personally would highly advise you guys to get a Windows laptop. Right? I hope you all got a notebook out right now and taking notes. A Windows laptop over a Mac laptop, and I'll tell you why. So a Mac laptop are usually a lot more expensive than a Windows laptop. So for a Mac laptop, you could probably pay about $1,000 and you could get, quite a low processor, low storage, and then your RAM is pretty low as well. And you'll notice that with a Mac, well, I personally noticed that after probably about a year, they slow down significantly. They get really, really slow and kind of just like slow and sluggish, I guess, as a computer. I'm not sure if you can describe a computer sluggish, but they do get really, really slow, and I think they kind of get cogged up with information and they get lots of issues and stuff, which is what I've personally found with them. However, so you could pay $1,000 for that, where after a year it's going to get all slow and just a mess. Or you could pay for a Windows for the same price. They might not look as nice, they might not be a Mac, and you can't be flexing at university, but you could get a much better processor. You could get a lot more RAM. You can get a lot more storage, and they also run a lot quicker and a lot smoother for a longer period of time. And I feel like they're more like durable. So my laptop is a HP Envy with 16 gig RAM, Intel Core i7 8th generation, and then GeForce NVIDIA GeForce. Someone please correct me if I'm saying that completely wrong. I think that's graphic card. I'm not very good at my computer, so please bear with me. So this cost me £1,000. To get exactly the same specs in a Mac, it will cost you almost or over £2,000. So I think you just got to weigh up the options. Would you rather just downgrade a peg and get a computer that isn't as nice looking? You're not going to be flexing at university, but does the job, and you can also run architecture software such as Revit. AutoCAD runs a lot better on Windows, I find. Rhino runs a lot better on Windows, I find. And there's so many softwares that can't run on Mac, so I don't understand why people would invest in a Mac when they just don't run most of the softwares as well. Because if you get a Mac, you basically have to partition it to a Windows to be able to download Revit. But once you partition it to a Windows, it slows down the computer and it basically splits the storage, I think. Please correct me if I'm wrong. So basically just buy a Windows because it's so much easier, so much cheaper. They do the job. I've been using my computer now for 2 years. I've used it with Revit, Rhino, AutoCAD, all simultaneously, by the way. And I've also rendered videos 2 times a week for the past 2 years at the same time as doing work on Rhino, Revit, and it's working perfectly fine. Hopefully, touch wood. Hopefully it doesn't just absolutely conk out on me after I've said this. But yeah, definitely invest in the Windows. You'll notice yourself, you get a much better specs and they'll be a lot cheaper for the price. Next question, how to generate ideas/concepts. This is another big one. And I think this kind of changes as you go through university, but for a first year student, I'll just kind of go into the simple ideas behind it. So the first thing is obviously researching as much as possible, doing your site research and understanding everything about the site, pretty much everything. But as you get into probably third year, you might go down a bit more conceptual route and think about it more kind of theoretically and a lot more kind of critically. And you'll go into a lot more detail and depth, which you'll probably find out when you go into third year. But in first year, to generating ideas and concepts, the first thing to do is to do as much site analysis as possible, as much research about the site as possible, gathering as much information, all the historical information, everything about it, just so you know pretty much most things about the site. You've got a good grip with the site. You understand where things are and you understand what's going on. You understand the direction of traffic and the flow of people walking and everything about that. Just understand all of those things. And I think that gives you a good basis on what kind of things you can start to look at when you just begin to start designing a building. You can think, right, if all these people are walking in this direction, do I want an entrance here or do I want the entrance there? If all the cars are going in, there's a main road here, do I want a main road going directly through the back of the building, or do you want it? Do you want the front of the building by the main road, and do you want the building looking over the water? And what kind of angled roof do you want if the sun's going to be setting here? Do I want that wall there and not have much lighting into the space? Basically the site analysis gives you the basis on how to start beginning to build on the ideas and the concepts and everything. Once you've kind of done some rough ideas, you can then really start looking into precedents and looking into research and understanding lots and lots of different things like I mentioned earlier. You can research as much as you possibly want. And that begins to start developing ideas and concepts and kind of start understanding. You can start connecting information between the site and some of the ideas that you have, and think about it more conceptually and kind of theoretically and bringing in all those kinds of information. But then you're also responding to research from architects and research from the site. So you're creating a contextual response or a contextual response that is quite conceptual and theoretical from a certain research that you've done. And it's just important. I think just to answer the question, how to generate ideas and concepts, is just research. I think when you research, ideas instantly start coming to you. The more you look at work, the more ideas you're going to get. And I think the important thing is that once you've got those ideas in your head, get it down on paper. Make sure you've constantly got a bit of tracing paper out on the table or a sketchbook. You might think something in your head and you might try and draw it down on paper or write it down on paper, and it might not come out the way you thought it kind of would. But the important thing is getting those ideas down on paper, because once you've got the ideas down on paper, you can then think of more ideas because you've kind of taken that kind of pressure and that stress off your brain from that idea. You put it down onto paper and then you think, right, I can free up some space for the next idea. And I think the important thing is just for a few weeks when you start studying architecture is just tracing paper down on the table, get ideas out, ideas after ideas, writing things, doing little bullet points next to it, doing a little spider diagram, and think of ideas that could lead off that or what direction that could go in, have a little sketch next to it. Being quite kind of active and motivated with your ideas and getting things down onto a piece of paper. And you'll notice yourself just being so much more productive, and you'll notice yourself have so many more ideas, and you can develop on so many more ideas if you just get it down onto paper. Because a lot of the time you'll have so many ideas up here, but you just don't know how to get it down. And I think the important thing is to not worry about how it's going to turn out. Just get it down on paper, and then you know that maybe in a couple of weeks' time, if you've developed an idea and it's not really worked, you can then look back at that piece of paper where you've got all these ideas and you think, actually, that's a better route to go down. And then you can do that. So research the site, research a lot of architecture, research different types of architecture, research precedent studies, look at a lot of things to get as many ideas as possible. And then also getting those ideas down and just writing and drawing and reading and just embracing things, bringing lots of information into you, being a sponge, and that will help you really generate ideas and concepts. So I absolutely flew through those questions, and we're only like 35 minutes in, so we're going to answer some more questions. Give you guys a little break, have a little sip of my water. ASMR for you guys. What do you guys think if I did a ASMR video? So I think it'd be quite funny if we sat down and did an ASMR video. Okay, so this is kind of just going off topic a little bit, but I guess it was part of my first year experience. And this question is, have you found vlogging/content work has helped your study or hindered it, and how? Really big question, and I think it's quite an interesting question, really. I think filming things around university and filming my work and talking about my work on camera has actually helped me to look at things in a different way, from a different perspective, looking things through a camera, looking at things from a different point of view. I think it's given me a lot more a bigger scope, and understanding that there are these connections between different types of mediums. There are these connections between camera and art and architecture and interior design and illustration, and there's all these kind of creative professions that actually come together as one, and they actually all come together. So within my final year work, I used camera and film as a medium to kind of analyze and research the site and understanding information on the site, and I used camera as a medium of that study. And then that gave me the chance to understand how things can be translated through film and how you can actually showcase architecture through film, or how you can understand architecture through film. So I know that's kind of gone off your question a bit in terms of creating content, but I also think me talking about my experiences and sharing my experiences at university has also helped me to be a little bit more kind of understanding people's situations, and really kind of helping people. And I think that's really important, is to really help people, and especially going through first year, you don't want to just be helped by people, but you also want to help people. That is the whole idea of being in the studio environment. You want to be there to be able to help people. You want to be available if someone is really struggling and you're doing really well in your projects and you feel like you're in a really good position and you've got all these ideas going in your head and you've got all these ideas bouncing around, and someone sat there who is struggling and they're not getting any concepts or ideas and they are really struggling to develop their work. You can sit down with them and bounce some ideas off them, give them some ideas, give them a bit of motivation and a broader understanding, because a lot of the time when you are kind of so zoned in on your own project, you kind of forget about the people around you, and you kind of forget about the opportunities that you have if you actually speak to people, and how that actually might help you with your own projects and allow it to grow. So I think to not only get help from others, but also helping other people. And I felt like I could do that because of my YouTube. It gave me an opportunity to be able to help more people through social media, but also in the university itself. I guess it gave me a little bit more confidence to be able to speak to people, because I was a little bit more confident by walking around with a camera and whatnot. And it gave me an opportunity to speak to people. So yeah, definitely if you are going into first year and you're noticing someone that is struggling to get on with their work, and you're quite a confident person, and you are quite kind of confident in your work and confident in your ability, make sure to go over to that person, sit next to them, help them with some work, push them along a bit, motivate them a little bit. And I promise you they'll be really kind of thankful for that. I mean, in the long run, you'll feel much better for it if you're kind of being there to help other people, as well as learn for yourself. And yeah, that probably doesn't answer that question at all. But I thought I'd just go down that route to kind of finish up on talking about first year. And I think I'm going to wrap up the podcast here, to be honest, people. I think we've been talking for about 40 minutes now, so it's a nice short and sweet podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I've gone off on tangents, and I know I ramble on quite a bit and I repeat myself quite a bit. But I guess that's the beauty of sitting down and speaking to a camera for 45 minutes. It's because I can sit down and ramble on, especially when I'm working in a full-time job and I don't have the opportunity to ramble to people, especially working remotely and I'm just sat on my laptop pretty much on myself with some music on. I don't have that opportunity to talk. So when I turn the camera on and I set up the podcast mic, you best make sure that I'm going to be sitting here speaking and rambling on and going off on tangents, because I haven't had the opportunity all day. So thank you as always for listening to the number one student podcast in the world, people. If you've got any questions, drop them down below if you are watching this on YouTube. If you've got any questions and you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, just drop me a message at my Instagram, which is at TomRowStudios. And yeah, thank you for listening to the number one student podcast in the world. I hope you found this one useful for you first years out there, or just people in general. So yeah, that is it. Peace.